What if everything you knew about storytelling was wrong? Well, maybe not wrong, but different. What if there was a different way, a new way, not just to tell stories, but to perceive a story, to even know what it means to have a story? Today we're going to kick that off. We're going to look into that. But first, I want to look at a quote that's very foundational to what we're talking about. The most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, the values, and the agenda of the generation that is yet to come. That is from the CEO and co-founder of Pixar, the late Steve Jobs, one of the most revolutionary companies in the entertainment industry. And what does it mean to tell stories for the way that we're talking about, this unique way, the way that I know that many of you guys have been taught, or you guys heard of, or you've seen it, the 3 act structure. And that is the very most famous foundational way to tell a story. And I love it. I've used it. I enjoy it when it's being told. We're going to put it to the side. I mean, I'm looking at Save the Cat right now. I don't want to diminish the value of it. And we're going to get into it one day. We're going to get into it. We're going to dive in to what that looks like and what that means and how the 3 act structure has been evolved across Hollywood. But today, I want to go through something deeper, something more broader, just the idea of a story. What does it mean? What does it mean to have a story? I mean, it's so interesting. Stories are used since the beginning of civilization, globally across the world. Whether it's the Chinese wisdom and knowledge and teaching that they would pass down to generations using stories, to Buddhists teaching their followers through stories, to the Quran teaching and learning and growing through stories. And yes, even Jesus Christ, majority of the work and words we have of him were stories. So these stories, these must mean something. The idea of saying something strictly or straight to the point. But these teachers and these rabbis and these messiahs all across the world use stories. And that's something interesting. Shakespeare, he wrote the different political figures that he wrote through. There was Henry VIII, whether it was Julius Caesar, whether he mourned his own son Hamlet. He wrote a story. And that is the power of humanity. And it's not just because we hear them when we're kids from our bedtime stories, to we hear them in church, or that we hear them from a politician. They're foundational because they're the lens we use to view the world. It's very interesting as you go back and you rewatch different films. We know this because when you rewatch a film, you resonate differently with it. Same story. How many times when you were a kid did you have your favorite bedtime story that you wanted your mom or dad to read to you over and over again? But we know what's going to happen. But knowing what happens isn't always a deal breaker because of the journey of how we get there. You know, there's a quote, I forget who by, if I can remember, I'll put it up. Someone once asked someone, is it the journey or the destination? And the person answered back and said, it's the company. And that's very interesting. The situations in our life and the events that we go through, we talk about, this could be in a movie, or, we tend to think of those as big events or interesting things or crazy stuff. Whether you experience something insane on your way to work, you're like, that's like right out of a movie. But what's interesting is the relationships that we hold together. That is what we make movies on. That's what plays have been written on Broadway for. That's why there's poetry slams, because of the inherent connection to people. And this is what I want to talk about. Then I said, remember when I was talking about, I want to throw away for just a second, just for this video, just for this moment, throw away everything you know about storytelling. Throw everything you know about what a story is supposed to be. Take away all of the different stuff. And I want to strip it down to its bare minimums. And what does that look like? It's not conflict. There's no hero. There's no, there's no different and then there's the saving at the end. None of that. Just delete it. Delete it all. what is a story actually? And a story is, if you could think of it in this way, it's a metaphysical ideologies and truths connecting with physical grounded realism. That is the conception. That is the conception of most stories. Not just most stories, but we see this throughout all stories as we interact and as we go. I don't want you to think of it as this super philosophical, deep, Carl Jung or Dostoevsky and like all of these different really profound philosophers in the story. They had great things on the story. You guys should check them out. They're really fun. Well, they're not fun, but they're really interesting. But there's this simple idea. The way you can simplify it, and there's a couple different ways. As who follows Christ, you can see this in Christ's teaching. Is growing up, we already were told as at Sunday school, it's that parables that he would use and teach or something with that a earthly story with a heavenly meaning. It was like told that all the time, and I never really knew what that meant. Like, I don't think anyone really knew what that meant at that age, But you just say it and you're like, oh, okay, cool, and you move on. And then, no, it's actually profound. That's 95% of all stories. And I'm not talking about specifically like Christianity's heaven. I'm talking about like what heaven means to you in the sense of in the searching of something larger than life, something bigger than yourself, meet something as big as you. That is a story. That is what it means to storytell. And there's so many different facets and so many different ways to understand this. And there's by the way, we're walking to McDonald's, unless you guys were curious. And we're going to explain more when we get there. But not why we're going there, but just more when we get there. We're going to get into more later of the ethos, pathos, and logos of society, and that is really what what storytelling is all about. How you can view it, a new way you can view storytelling. But I think it can even be broken down deeper than that. And this is what I wanted to talk about in the video. I know I've said that like 3 or 4 times, but I really do. I really think this is one of the most key fundamental aspects. Something that was taught like philosophers and religion, and all these different things, is this idea of having childlike wonder and having childlike imagination. And if you talk to millions and all throughout artists, whether they're filmmakers or whether they're poet writers or they're playwriters or they're DPs, and a lot of them, I know several of them, or I've heard of them, or I've watched them, or I've read them, say that one of the most magical things about their job is when people go to the theater or the play or whatever, and they have a childlike wonder at the end or during it. They were just completely confounded. What should we get? I'm thinking, going with a classic frappe. There we go. Childlike wonder. This idea that the hustle and bustle, and like I would love that in my films and the art that I make, for someone to have that wonder, that childlike wonder, to experience it. But it's interesting that that is the emotional connecting stories. Having stories being, then therefore childlike, child wonder, child amazement. And there's something pure and honest about a child, something authentic and truthful that as art is, and that's what makes art so profound, is art is a fantasy a lot of times, and it's a magical, and it's, and it's make-believe, but it brings you to such an authentic emotion, and it brings you to such a wholesome state, or excited state, or an amazed state, or a connected state. All of these things that as humans are very complicated to navigate through and connect with and to originate with, but through a story, it flows through. And I think because if we dig even deeper, we notice this idea, because like the meta-narrative equals the physical
the physical narrative, which then equals connection. As long as the two are going in cycle with one another, the connection is always made and always built. And this is what makes storytelling so exciting. Because we have an emotion. Say we just went through a breakup. Say we just had a bad phone call with one of our parents. Say maybe our bank account's kind of low. Maybe we're struggling with a friendship to connect. Maybe job sucks. Like you can go through the whole list. Maybe I'm not getting out of college what I thought I wanted to. Or like, I've even heard songs down to the car's not working. But as an artist, those are emotions in our life. We have these emotional experiences, and that's what they are. They're emotional experiences. If they weren't, and there was no emotions tied to that rough phone call, or those grades, or your job not being as your expectations, or friendship hardship going through, then we wouldn't feel as connected or as hurt or as disturbed or troublesome by them. So it's these conflicts in our life as the artist that we translate as a meta-narrative into something as jovial and silly as Alice in Wonderland, as crazy that nothing in that land is ever grounded. But there was a story there, right? Look at Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz is a straw man and a tin man, and his girl's transported. She's going to alternate realities or worlds. That book was written as a slapback during a conflict of the politics of the early 1900s, late 20th century. That is profound. A political satire book built and breeded the entire Wizard of Oz, which then inspired, I forget his name, I'm going to pop him up with his name on the screen, Wicked, which is now a billion-dollar franchise. And so we have the storytelling of what we feel and how it is connected. There is no depth, there is no length of that. It is purely in the eye of the beholder. That is what storytelling is. It is in a situation that we have lived that's translated as a meta-narrative, that's a physical narrative to breed connection. I'll give you another example. And this is kind of the raw, original ethos. The last example I'll give, and this is kind of where I want to sum this part up, is children playing. We're going back to this idea of childlike wonder. And it's the idea of play. Oh, this is so good, by the way. Playing. It's such a simple concept. At first, like, these kids, they just run around and they're playing tag, or maybe they're playing free tag. But if you stop and think about it, kids alone, they don't need their parents, they don't need an advisor, they don't need an instructor. Will go out and play games on their own. And sometimes, I don't know if you ever tried playing those games, but they're complicated. You know what they're hard though? It's not just a bunch of anarchy of kids running around. For them to play, there has to be rules. And it's very interesting, this idea that the very thing they want to do is have fun and freedom and excitement and adventure is dictated by the rules. If there's no rules to tag, then tag's not fun. If there's no rules to spot, great game, there's no fun. The idea of what you can't do immediately brings inherent value to what you can do. And this is what storytelling is all about. Play is a really great way to think about a story. There's things you can't do. There's things people are trying to do. There's things people have cemented as, there's always usually a kid who outranks everyone else as the best. And there's kids who want to bring down that best. And they're trying different ways to do it. But they can only do it in the rules. So as the artist, storytelling is figuring out what rules are we tying around an event. Remember the very beginning of the video, I said a story is any event or situation, real or fictional, And I said there's a little asterisk on that that redefines it entirely. And that's this idea that it can be anything. It can be anywhere. It can be Wizard of Oz. It can be Star Wars. It can be Shrek. It can also be One Battle After Another. It can be Saving Private Ryan. It can be these very gritty, real, like, dramas. It can be Moneyball. Or it could be Dumbo and the elephant is flying. All of them are the same. They all follow the same thing. And I'm not talking 3-act structure. I'm not talking Save the Cat. I'm talking logos and ethos. I'm talking the metaphysical, the physical narrative that breeds this connection, of this idea of play. That it's so interesting, that childlike wonder that we're all searching for, that we think is like the pinnacle. Or maybe not all films, like Saving Private Ryan, you don't want that in, but a lot of films, we always like to escape this world and to be in a wonder. I mean, I was a magician since I was 13, doing performance and shows. You hear it all the time as a magician. As an artist, you want to bring wonder and excitement. And if you're going to maybe definitionalize play, and we see like it's a kid and you want to be like a kid and you have to make these rules and these rules make it worthy of achievement. Maybe we would bridge the 3-act process that we know, and this is probably an adventure. And we're all told, through the books that there's a boy and there's a buddy adventure. There's Chip in the Bottle. There's a billion of them, and you can go. Not a billion, but like there's a whole list of them I can put on the screen of the different types of stories we're told to tell. I encourage you never to look at that list. If you're a writer, never look at that list. That list is for maybe directors of how to reframe stories that have already been written. But if you're trying to tell a story, never use that list. If you're trying to, just as a person who enjoys stories, you don't even like storytelling. Not that you don't like it, but you don't even think you want to do it. You just enjoy story. View it through an adventure. Don't view through it. Here's a hot take. Don't view a story by the conflict and the resolution that's in it. View it by the characters and by the rules that you've given to it at play. And you can also, a whole new meaning unlocks once you start realizing that a story is a meta-narrative at its core. What does this mean? It means that there's this idea is bigger than yourself, that people are representing, or things are physical representations of, that connect with the physical, that gives you that moment. And you can see this through Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh is one of my favorite shows. My mom told it to me as a kid. I read it growing up. The movie is amazing. I love the movie. It's a very, very popular show and children's book series. That entire thing is an allegory on the mental condition of how we experience connection and adventure. If you want to do a deep analysis, and we'll probably do it on the channel eventually, look into that story. That is a good teller of how there's no conflict. I mean, if there's conflict, sure, there's resolution, yeah, sure. But how's Tigger feeling? How's Eeyore? Stuff like that is what makes a story work. Now, hold on, give me a second.
All right, we're back, guys. We are back. And we're back. So we kind of went over a lot of different things in this video, exploring the idea of what a story really is, down to the adventures of play and how to make rules, to have freedom. And a lot of that is what is in a story. There are things you can't do, and there are things the characters can do, and they're searching, and what they're searching for, and that adventure along the way. And many would say the 3-act structure is an adventure or journey, and I would agree with them. I would absolutely. But what I believe in, and this is why I love being a writer, is the way we connect to stories sometimes means more than the structure or the logos of it, like the facts of it, are. So sometimes the way we feel with it, the way it connects with us. Earlier in the video we were talking about rewatchability and watching stories or listening to stories or seeing stories over and over, reading stories over and over and over again, and somehow we keep going to it. For some reason we still keep listening to that audiobook. We keep on buying those tickets to see the play. We go to the movie theater twice in the same weekend, and we get something different every time. That's the beauty of storytelling. That's what makes storytelling the most powerful thing in the world, is it changes as we change. It grows as we grow. There's nothing as an artist, as a filmmaker, as a writer, as a magician, as a pianist, all of the different things I love to do in art. I myself address them, and how I make them and do them change how my life is going, the situations in my life. And some would say, and there's some out there that would argue, and I completely agree with them to a degree, that you should never let the story be overtaken by your emotions as a writer. That it should you should choose the character's emotions more than your emotions. When connection and adventure link together, that is when there's magic in a story. That's the Lord of the Rings that we all love. That's some of the biggest franchises, That's why we enjoy Indiana Jones, because it's an adventure with him. But we get to also see him grow. He's this agnostic, by the facts type of person. And then as we see him grow, he makes connections with people all through the movies. All of the stories that we grew up with, that we're learning now that are coming out with, that we loved and maybe even we hated. Connection and adventure are the two components that make a great story. Now, one thing we were talking about earlier was the meta narrative inside with the physical narrative that connects the connection that we're talking about. The amazing thing about the meta narrative is it is translucent to the reader, not to the writer. And this makes the meta-narrative the most important and powerful part of storytelling. This is why we can go back and we can rewatch something 5, 6, 10 times. We can buy the ticket 2 or 3 times. We can't put the book down. We gotta pick it back up. We gotta keep on reading it. We get those audio, we're listening to it over and over again. We can't put it down because for some reason, for this one time, for something, there's a connection, a new connection, a connection you never saw before and heard before. And it's now personal again and again and again. And this is what makes the meta-narrative so true. Because what is the meta-narrative? The meta-narrative is the truth that is not being told or seen, but is being represented by something. It is not explicitly talked about, it is not explicitly shown, but it is the inherent heart of that character. Whatever that means for that story and for that character. I mean, one of the most, famous examples, Wizard of Oz. It was a political satire. And then Warner Brothers picked it up and got the rights to make it, and it became one of the most, successful movies at that time. And to them, it meant something. There's representation all through there. And the first time I heard Wizard of Oz, I was in kindergarten. We had to go to the library, every day for like a month or two. So they read it to us in portions. And I loved it. And I fell in love with that story as a kid. And as I got older and I learned more about, even Ethos, Pagos, and Logos, and learned more as a writer, and I learned more about like religious teachings and why are stories used, and, became a writer, I really fell in love with the Wizard of Oz in a whole new way. And it was all about who do you decide to bring along with you in the adventure of a lifetime, and the adversities that you come with translate to the opportunities that you want. And that was what I got out of high school and college. That is the same child, same person who was in kindergarten, falling in love with that book. Completely different meanings, and that's the beautiful thing of the meta-narrative. So I implore you, the next time you watch your favorite film, or a new film, or a film you don't like, anything in between, ask yourself the question, what is something in here I can connect with? And I promise you, it's going to change your perspective. Thank you guys for watching. I I'm honored and thankful that you guys made it to the end. Stay tuned to the next video. We're going to be doing some new series, and also drop a comment at the end below if what you want to see, what movie you want me to review, what idea do you want me to break down. And trust me, we will get to the third act, this 3-act structure. We're not going to hate on it forever. All right, see you guys. Oh my goodness, this is so good. I got drinks everywhere. You didn't even know about them. And by the way, this doesn't even work. This is a